Welcome to the Plume and Page. Today's story is 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. Chapter 41. From Cape Horn to the Amazon. How I got onto the platform I have no idea. Perhaps the Canadian had carried me there, but I inhaled the vivifying sea air. My two companions were getting drunk with the fresh particles. The other unhappy men had been so long without food that they could not with impunity indulge in the simplest ailments that were given them. We, on the contrary, had no end to restrain ourselves. We could draw this fresh air freely into our lungs, and it was the breeze alone, that filled us with this keen enjoyment. "Ah," said Conseil, "how delightful this oxygen is! Master need not fear to breathe it. There is enough for everybody." Ned Land did not speak, but he opened his jaws wide enough to frighten a shark. Our strength soon returned, and, when I looked round me, I saw we were alone on the platform. The foreign seamen in the Nautilus were contented with the air that circulated in the interior. None of them had come to drink in the open air. The first words I spoke were words of gratitude and thankfulness to my two companions. Ned and Conseil had prolonged my life during the last hours of this long agony. All my gratitude could not repay such devotion. "My friends," said I, "we are bound one to the other forever, and I am under infinite obligations to you." "Which I shall take advantage of," exclaimed the Canadian. "What do you mean?" said Conseil. "I mean that I shall take you with me when I leave this infernal Nautilus." "Well," said Conseil, "after all this, are we going right?" "Yes," I replied, "for we are going the way of the sun, and here the sun is in the north." "No doubt," said Ned Land, "but it remains to be seen whether he will bring the ship into the Pacific or the Atlantic Ocean, that is, into frequented or deserted seas." I could not answer that question, and I feared that Captain Nemo would rather take us to the vast ocean that touches the coasts of Asia and America at the same time. He would thus complete the tour round the submarine world, and return to those waters in which the Nautilus could sail freely. We ought, before long, to settle this important point. The Nautilus went at a rapid pace. The polar circle was soon passed, and the course shaped for Cape Horn. We were off the American point, March 31st at 7 o'clock in the evening. Then all our past sufferings were forgotten. The remembrance of that imprisonment in the ice was effaced from our minds. We only thought of the future. Captain Nemo did not appear again, either in the drawing-room or on the platform. The point shown each day on the planisphere and, marked by the lieutenant, showed me the exact direction of the Nautilus. Now, on that evening it was evident, to my great satisfaction, that we were going back to the north by the Atlantic. The next day, April 1st, when the Nautilus ascended to the surface some minutes before noon, we sighted land to the west. It was Terra del Fuego, which the first navigators named thus from seeing the quantity of smoke that rose from the natives' huts. The coast seemed low to me, but in the distance rose high mountains. I even thought I had a glimpse of Mount Sarmiento that rises 2,070 yards above the level of the sea, with a very pointed summit which, according as it is misty or clear, is a sign of fine or of wet weather. At this moment the peak was clearly defined against the sky. The Nautilus, diving again under the water, approached the coast, which was only some few miles off. From the glass windows in the drawing-room I saw long seaweeds and gigantic fuci, and varech, of which the open polar sea contained so many specimens, with their sharp polished filaments. They measured about 300 yards in length. Real cables thicker than one's thumb, and, having great tenacity, they are often used as ropes for vessels. Another weed, known as velp, with leaves 4 feet long, buried in the coral concretions, hung at the bottom. It serves as nest and food for myriads of crustacea and mollusks, crabs and cuttlefish. The seas and otters had splendid repasts, eating the flesh of fish with sea vegetables, according to the English fashion. Over this fertile and luxuriant ground the Nautilus passed with great rapidity. Towards evening it approached the Falkland group, the rough summits of which I recognized the following day. The depth of the sea was moderate. On the shores our nets brought in beautiful specimens of seaweed, and particularly a certain fucus, the roots of which were filled with the best mussels in the world. Geese and ducks fell by dozens on the platform, and soon took their place in the pantry on board. When the last heights of the Falklands had disappeared from the horizon, the Nautilus sank to between 20 and 25 yards, and following the American coast. Captain Nemo did not show himself. Until the 3rd of April we did not quit the shores of Patagonia, sometimes under the ocean, sometimes at the surface. The Nautilus passed beyond the large estuary formed by the Uruguay. Its direction was northwards, and followed the long windings of the coast of South America. We had then made 1,600 miles since our embarkation in the seas of Japan. About 11 o'clock in the morning the Tropic of Capricorn was crossed on the 37th meridian, and we passed Cape Frio standing out to sea. Captain Nemo, to Ned Land's great displeasure, did not like the neighborhood of the inhabited coasts of Brazil, for we went at giddy speed. Not a fish, not a bird of the swiftest kind could follow us, and the natural curiosities of these seas escaped all observation. This speed was kept up for several days, and in the evening of the 9th of April we sighted the most westerly point of South America that forms Cape San Roque. But then the Nautilus swerved again, and sought the lowest depth of a submarine valley, which is between this cape and Sierra Leone, on the African coast. This valley bifurcates to the parallel of the Antilles, and terminates at the mouth of the enormous depression of 9,000 yards. In this place the geological basin of the ocean forms, as far as the Lesser Antilles, a cliff to 3.5 miles perpendicular in height, and, at the parallel of Cape Verde Islands, another wall not less considerable, that encloses thus all the sunk continent of the Atlantic. The bottom of this immense valley is dotted with some mountains that give to these submersible places a picturesque aspect. I speak, moreover, from the manuscript charts that were in the library of the Nautilus, charts evidently due to Captain Nemo's hand, and made after his personal observations. For 2 days the desert and deep waters were visited by means of the inclined planes. The Nautilus was furnished with long diagonal broadsides, which carried it to all elevations. But on the 11th of April it rose suddenly, and land appeared at the mouth of the Amazon River, a vast estuary, the embouchure of which is so considerable that it freshens the sea water for the distance of several leagues.